Okay, this is So I'm Watching Riverdale. I'm Kristen, and we're joined again by Rachel.
Hi.
Will is out of town helping our friend buy a house in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So we are covering tonight's episode of Riverdale, season 5, episode 14, chapter 90, The Night Gallery. Okay. This episode was set up kind of like a Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode, where it was like a very thin frame for 3 different stories that involved 3 of the characters.
That's a very apt comparison,
yeah.
I would say.
Usually we get these type of episodes around Halloween, where I feel like they fit better than September 1st. I guess it is the beginning of spooky season.
But I feel like they really jumped the gun on that one.
They really did. Okay, so the very thin framing of this episode is that Cheryl has invited Minerva. Remember Minerva? Yeah. The last time we saw her, she was fleeing the scene as Nana Rose tried to sacrifice her.
Yeah.
So Cheryl has invited Minerva back to Thornhill, right? That's right?
Yes.
I think that's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In order to take a look at the new paintings she has created, which are doozies, every single one of them.
Okay, I think Archie's was by far the worst because it just really punched you in the face right out of the gate.
It just looks like the cover of a romance novel, and you cannot tell me any different.
But like a romance novel that you would get at the bottom of the barrel,
Yeah, 100%. No, you bought it at the Goodwill.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Woof.
So, okay, and then in between showing Minerva these paintings, she tells the story of what inspired them, because Minerva is like, walk me through the inspiration for this painting. And it's like, Archie has an 8-pack and he sometimes is a fireman. That feels like it.
Well, in this first little chunk of the episode, I would really like to see that Riverdale and Sabrina crossover that they were clearly tempting us with.
100%, because they were in these mines, which are
That's literally all they did was exist in the mines on Sabrina.
So, unfortunately, these are not the same mines. These mines are on Cheryl. So, okay, Cheryl has not only a maple grove, but a mine on her property that they were not originally using to mine palladium. I assume it was coal, but there is evidently also palladium down there. And so Uncle Frank is like, totally, as long as the mine already exists, I can do it. I ran a crew in Alaska. And it was like, Uncle Frank, now is not the time for your Renaissance man. Shit.
He just wants to be involved.
He does. So here's my biggest problem with this episode. Because to be totally honest, I actually was having a great time.
Oh, yeah.
This is classic Riverdale shenanigans, nonsense, amazing.
Yeah.
But my biggest problem with this episode is that none of the 3 stories were resolved in any way.
No.
In no fashion was there any resolution for any of the 3 stories.
No, if anything, the 2 ties that they were trying to tie together got thrown in opposite directions and set on fire.
Yeah. So Archie's deal is that he is having really bad PTSD, which we only got the first glimpse of last week.
Surprise!
Yeah. So that's my first issue, is that it's so out of nowhere, this PTSD. Like, they haven't, I mean, I guess you can sort of assume that because he's been to war, he's gonna, like, have an issue, but it's like, it does feel kind of out of nowhere.
Right.
So he has this PTSD, and he's going to a doctor, and then somehow, because of carbon monoxide poisoning from the mine, he's hallucinating, and he believes that his doctor is poisoning him. And so then he freaks out on her while she's with another patient. And she's like, I can't treat you anymore because I'm scared for my life when you're in this office. And I'm just like, I mean,
that's not how it works.
Also, refer him to another doctor. Right. She just was like, you need to leave. And I was like,
yeah. I mean, that Hippocratic oath be damned.
She also just gave him a bottle of pills.
Yep. Here you go.
No prescription, nothing. Just reached in her desk, gave him a bottle of pills. Mm-hmm. Whatever. So they did find some palladium, which I guess is great.
One piece.
One small piece. And then they all started hallucinating, even though that's not what carbon monoxide does, to my knowledge.
No, I don't. As far as I know, which we discussed, it just makes you sleepy and then you die.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just,
It's called the silent killer for a reason.
Right. And I assumed it was some sort of like palladium poisoning, like because they're amongst all these minerals, maybe that's what's poisoning them. I would not have gone to carbon monoxide. Where did it come from?
So that's the thing is Uncle Frank said it's the gas. And I was like, oh, well, if they like hit a pocket of like natural gas or something actually like harmful, I totally get that. But just like, nope, lack of oxygen only. And I'm like, that doesn't make you hallucinate and go crazy.
No.
Regardless, what was the other thing that drove me nuts in his... Oh, shit, there was something else about their whole thing. Well, Moose was nowhere to be found, and I'm furious about it. That's my first issue. I've said that 4 times already, that it's my first issue.
All of the issues.
They all have equal measure.
So many issues.
Yeah, so there was just like a lot of stuff like that. Oh, that was my favorite part of that story is Cheryl was like, how come you've stopped working? And they were like, well, it's like, you know, there's like poison air down there or whatever. And she was like, fine, we'll just invest in a flock of canaries. And I just was like, Cheryl doesn't care how many canaries die.
No.
As long as she gets her palladium.
Yes.
Although I loved the kind of meta moment when she was like, apparently I'm the last to know what everybody else has known for months, which is that there is like a vein of palladium below my maple groves and I need to get it before Hiram does. And I was like, finally, a proactive plan to get ahead of Hiram.
Absolutely. And I love that. But my whole thing is you don't know anything because you have now invested yourself in yet another cult.
Yeah. 100%.
And so, girl, that's why.
100%.
Look up every once in a while.
And I did also really appreciate that Minerva was like, I'm not interested in joining whatever you're doing here. Yeah. And the last time I was in this house, I was about to be sacrificed. So like, let's get to it.
And man, I don't know about you guys, but my favorite way to look at fine art is with a candelabra during a very, very thundery, rainy evening.
You know, Cheryl's got to keep the aesthetic up.
You know, I can appreciate it. I love a vibe. That was too much of a vibe.
I mean, Cheryl is nothing if not, you know, she has to have that candelabra all the time.
Well, that's because she says things like why for? So she needs the accessory.
No, it's great. I don't ever want to see Cheryl not carrying a candelabra. It's my favorite thing.
Or a Tim Burton umbrella.
Oh my God, that fucking umbrella. Both of us at the exact same time. The literal first shot of the episode is like Minerva's umbrella. And we just both were like, fucking umbrella.
Well, there are a lot of parasol moments in this episode, too.
Her and Nana Rose both had one later.
Yeah, just really a good day for the umbrella business, I guess.
Really good. Also, before we get too deep in this, I wanted to say that Metch and Amick actually directed this episode, and I thought it looked amazing.
It did.
Really cool, especially in part 2, which is Betty's segment of this episode, which was also my favorite segment of this episode. Because even though nothing resolved, it was like the closest to some kind of step forward. Like nothing happened with Archie. Nothing happened with Jughead at the end. It's just like, we're just sort of like, you know, two-stepping in the same spot. But Betty's thing had some sort of momentum. So her painting was just like crazy eyes with a chainsaw.
Nightmare Factory.
It was so funny.
Oh my God.
So we go back to what we were in the last episode, which is that Betty has kidnapped this trucker who she believes is responsible for all the murders. Nothing but circumstantial evidence.
Correct.
Like, he tried to kill her, but like, that doesn't automatically mean he killed everyone else. Also, we started operating under the assumption that Polly is dead. And until I see Polly's body, I don't believe it. She's probably out starting another cult.
Probably.
She probably won over the trucker that tried to kill her and was like, what if we start a cult together? And he was like, cool.
Or she probably randomly, by her happenstance, found the one trucker who was like, you know what I would really love is to start my own cult.
Yeah.
And then they got married and now they're ruling together.
Sure. Of course. I'm there. Yep. I'm there for all of that. So Betty's story got dark as fuck, as it is wont to do.
Yes.
I loved it. I also loved the Alice moments in this episode because she was very like, I'll do whatever it takes if you think this guy. She's literally, although these Cooper women, I'm obsessed. Betty literally comes home and goes, I did something. I kidnapped a trucker. She just comes out with it. And I'm like, well, you've buried like 3 bodies together. Yeah. At this point, you can just say.
Par for the course.
So she's like, I kidnapped this trucker. I think he's the one that killed Polly. And they just keep saying killed. And I'm like, again, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
So she's like, I kidnapped this trucker. I have him tied up in the shop class at school. Again, hilarious. And she's like, I think if we could humanize Polly, he'd like tell us, you know? Again, very Silence of the Lambs. Like her thing has been this whole season. And Alice is like, 100% I'll do it. Let's go right now.
Super down. Let's do it.
She puts down her needlepoint of the twins and she's like, let's go. So they get there and she's like showing all these pictures, and the guy was like pretty good.
He was very good. He was very sinister. Yeah.
Did he have a name? Trucker. Thomas Nicholson. Well done, Thomas Nicholson. Very creepy, very good, like vibe the whole time.
Yes.
And so he just sort of like smiles grossly at her and like
a lot of this happening.
Yeah.
Like very scary eyes through the eyebrows type of thing.
Then the lighting like from the top.
Yep.
So he's basically like, no, fuck you. I'm not going to do this. And so Alice, when they get back home, Alice is literally like, kill him, Betty. I'm giving you permission. That's like not going to absolve her of murder charges later.
No.
She also still is not an FBI agent.
No.
So she's just a rogue citizen.
I was waiting. Well, so here's what I was waiting for, because she has the serial killer gene.
Sure.
So I was waiting for her to tap into that so she could out serial killer the possible serial killer.
Sure.
That's what I keep kind of waiting for, which I know that she's doing, you know, the Detective Starling bit.
Yeah.
But
she could pivot into a Dexter situation for sure. I see that. I would be down for that too. But she doesn't do that. She does go kind of dark Betty though, again, where she's like, here's what I'm going to do to you, and gets very graphic about cutting off his limbs and cauterizing the wounds, and then saying that maybe he'll die of a heart attack, but she's got some tricks up her sleeve, which I don't even want to imagine what those tricks might be. Syringes full of adrenaline popped in my mind.
Or filleting.
Yeah, that's worse.
That's where my mind went.
Jeez, Rachel, that's way worse.
I mean, if it would get someone to talk, it would get me. I would no one would have to even threaten me with that. I'd be like, I will sing like a canary.
No, I would never. I would be the worst hostage. Be like, so we're gonna rip off your fingernails, and I would be like, what do you want to know?
Yeah.
Anything you want to know.
Would you like me to write it down? I would be more than happy to do that.
I'm a notary. I can notarize. I can't notarize my own signature, but I can do it. I can notarize something.
Yeah.
It got really grim and dark and graphic, and then he finally was like, oh, did she sometimes go by Patty and she had blue eyes and blah, 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 and Betty was like, yeah, you remember her?
An infinity tattoo.
She would.
She absolutely fucking would. That basic bitch.
I don't even hate Polly.
Oh my God.
I don't even hate Polly like Rachel and Will do, and she fucking would.
Okay. I don't hate her. I'm going to state that on this channel.
Okay.
I don't hate her. she's toast. She's
sure. Okay.
And she's annoying. But
then I would say she's white bread, because toast is interesting.
Okay, fair. Yeah. She is white bread that likes Colts. So
she might also be toast as in dead, though.
Oh, double meaning. Look at you.
So she's like, do you remember her? And he's like, nope, not even a little. And I'm like, why are you toying with this woman who just said she was going to chop off all your limbs? So
I think that was the moment that he decided, you know what I'm going to do?
I'm going to bite off my own tongue and swallow it.
Yep. And
which is exactly what he did.
Yep.
So Betty goes back and he has killed himself, and Alice feels better, but like Betty is still like, well, we still don't know what happened, or like where Polly is, or like, you know, even if they're trying to find just her body, they don't know where she is, and that sucks. So
Oh, and I think it's important to note that the threats that Betty made to do to this man, she was quoting the trash bag killer.
Correct.
Who we think is just fully wrapped in trash bags.
Which seems counterintuitive to, like, breathing.
Yeah. Because it just, I mean, if you want to talk about, like, carbon monoxide poisoning, I mean, carbon dioxide poisoning at that point, or, you know, just, like, breathe in too hard, you know, someone surprises you, and then just right in there, donezo.
Yeah, way done.
Yeah.
I saw eye holes, but I didn't see a mouth.
No. That's what I was looking for, but nope, it's just straight across.
Yeah, so while Betty was in the Buffalo Bill pit, the trash bag killer said that he was going to cut off all her limbs the same way. Fine. So that brings us to the third segment of this episode, which is senseless. Absolutely senseless.
Oh.
Okay, I'm going to say something right now, because I say it sometimes when Will is here on the show, and he always is like, whatever. I kind of like Jughead. I really like Cole Sprouse. I think Jughead has been an interesting character. Yes. And I think when he interacts with the other characters, it's better. Jughead by himself is the worst thing I've ever seen.
He really loves to throw the term trauma around.
Wow. Have you met Betty?
Okay. So I 100% agree with you. He is really treading this really gross line of being like almost one of those incel type guys, since I know what that word means.
Sure.
But just because he's
not that, because women just throw it at him.
Seriously.
But hot women.
But you want to talk about toxic traits, which then he calls himself out on later. But he's doing this thing that like, I have so much trauma that I really need to get to the core to. And it's just like, motherfucker, no, you don't.
You don't.
No. Go to fucking Archie's therapist, and she's giving out,
just pills.
Pills, baby.
Go see her. She seems like the type that would prescribe mushrooms for you to microdose, my guy. Microdose.
He took the whole envelope and just tipped it in his mouth. The entire envelope of mushrooms.
Down the hatch.
Too many mushrooms.
So many.
So it apparently also, to tie into another show we're doing, American Horror Story, this season, it was very like the black pills that Finn Wittrock is taking, where it was like immediate, and he wrote 200 pages in one night, which is insane. The other thing that I didn't care for about Jughead stories, well, first of all, he's in AA, it seems, which that's good, because he's absolutely drinking too much. So I like that he's in AA, and he's telling the story, but he makes a classic mistake first thing, which is that he says, "My name is Forsyth Pendleton Jones III." And I'm like, first of all, just say Jughead.
Yes.
Your real name is way too placeable. And it's called Alcoholics Anonymous. First names only. Come on.
Yeah.
That is like basic stuff. Moving past that, he gets into the story of like mostly shit we've already heard before, which is like his rise to like writing prominence or whatever, after he voluntarily left the Iowa Writers Program, which I don't remember if that one is a real thing, but there is a writing program like that this is meant to be based off of. That is so prestigious. And it's just like, he also just was like, so I went to college, and I was like, that's not college. It's like a writing workshop. You get invited to go there. It's so intense. And he's just like, but I hated it, and I needed to get to New York City. And it's like, fine.
But he's an artist, Kristen.
Is he Hemingway? I don't buy it.
Blech.
There also was a really on-the-nose painting of a field of rye, and I was like, get out of my house. So he goes on this long story of everything we've already heard about, like how he left the Iowa writing program, and he went to New York, and he got hooked on drugs, and he started drinking, and he like got this book published, and he left that nasty voicemail for Betty, which we got to listen to again.
I don't need to hear it anymore. I don't want to know about it anymore.
Yeah.
We don't need a reenactment.
It's really bad.
We don't, and we get it. You were a piece of shit drunk asshole who was still hung up on his high school girlfriend. We've all been there.
Yeah.
We don't need to relive it.
100%.
Please.
Like minutes after he left that voicemail, apparently, he fell down a sinkhole in the East Village. Rachel is certain that it's a manhole. Otherwise, it's the only sinkhole I've ever heard about in the East Village.
Well, and I have a question, because I feel like I know how sinkholes work, but this situation makes me unsure of that. Doesn't a sinkhole happen because the ground underneath gets too wet and it just kind of like dissolves away?
Kind of, yeah.
So there's city infrastructure in New York City.
You mean like the sewer that he ends up in? The abandoned subway tunnel or whatever that was?
Yeah. So it's a manhole that you fell into. And plus, I love that so the visual is that he walks around the corner of like this neon alleyway, and then he says he disappeared into darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah, you fell into a fucking manhole. I don't know why are you having a hard time with this?
He fell down a hole of some sort. We'll just leave it at that. He fell into a pit underground into the city, where he met a rat king.
Aren't rat kings a myth?
Okay, rat kings are real.
What's a rat king?
Fucking terrifying.
It's when a swarm of rats gets all tangled up in their tails tie together and they're just like one organism kind of at that point.
And then it gets awesome. Eventually, their bodies fuse together and they form a multi-headed live rat king, and we saw one.
Growing up having done the Nutcracker many, many times.
Also that.
I thought, I just heard Rat King, and then that's what I imagined. Yeah. When I tell you the disappointment and just fear that just rippled over my body once I learned what that actually was.
Okay, so the Rat King from the Nutcracker is like king of the rats.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is much more palatable than what a Rat King actually is. But Jughead's Rat King is a man in the sewer with like reddish goggles. Who then pulls a 1001 Arabian Nights on Jughead, is like, you stay here with me and tell me a story every day.
You know who he looked like? He looked like if one of the art schools in New York City decided to do like a real hip version of the Nutcracker. Sure. That's what the Rat King looked like.
The MoMA version of the Nutcracker.
The SNL skit where they're like the theater kids like doing all the weird stuff. Yeah. That absolutely is their Rat King.
100%.
For sure.
The whole point of this entire thing is that somehow Jughead fell down this hole and hallucinated this whole thing, but it was lucid enough to write it in the margins of his actual book. And then he woke up covered in rats. I also just don't know how he remembered this after the fact. And then he got rabies and started showing symptoms within 3 days, which to my knowledge is not correct.
I don't think that's right.
I think you have to have rabies for like months as a human before it starts presenting symptoms.
That sounds right.
Whatever. So he like woke up in the hospital and then immediately from the hospital answered Betty's phone call, who he was 3 days ago so mad at he left that voice, or I guess Archie called and was like, I need you to help Riverdale. So he went straight from the hospital back to Riverdale. And then he was like, I thought I needed to go back to New York, but then apparently this AA group is in Riverdale, so I don't know where the fuck Jughead is.
What?
Because he was like, I came back here to Riverdale. He said that in the AA meeting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I must have missed that.
Because last time we saw Jughead, he was hitchhiking back to New York.
Oh, that's right, because he needed to go again to the source of the trauma.
So is that when he went back? He hitchhiked all the way back to New York because I don't know where the fuck Riverdale is. He hitchhiked all the way back to New York, went down into the sinkhole, found the book, and then came back to Riverdale to go to an AA meeting. I feel like if he had just like walked upstairs from the sinkhole, he would have found an AA meeting like on the corner of the block.
Right. Oh, ow.
So
my brain. Wow.
And then the reason I don't know where Riverdale is because literally in this episode, Betty Betty is interrogating the guy and he's like, well, if you're with the FBI, I want my phone call. I'm a United States citizen. And Betty literally says, you're not in the United States. You're in Riverdale. And I was like, what?
Well, and so that if a city becomes unincorporated, that doesn't mean that it's not in the States anymore.
Okay, so it's unincorporated, but do you remember a couple of seasons ago, didn't they secede somehow? Aren't they like their own country? Weirdly, didn't Hiram do some kind of shit? And aren't they like kind of their own country or something? Something pinged my brain when that happened. And I was like, oh, maybe though they aren't technically in the United States.
Oh, I just thought he unincorporated the town. Like he dissolved the town.
Well, so that happened in the time jump.
Uh-huh.
It's been unincorporated since season 4.
Are they just fucking floating on an island in the middle of the ocean at this point?
The easiest explanation is that they're in Canada, but I have no idea where they are. They're close enough to, so that it's possible that this is like an upstate New York situation because they're close enough to hitchhike to Manhattan, but also that like gangsters can come down from Montreal.
Right.
So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I was fully prepared for Betty to say that they were in Canada. Like my body was really ready for it.
Okay.
Yeah, she was like, we're not in the United States. We're in Canada. And when she was like, we're in Riverdale, I'm like, no.
It's not how any of this works.
No.
I think my favorite thing about Betty's story too is that guy killed himself in the shop class. Mm-hmm. And we have no evidence that Betty cleaned that up. So come the school day after the long weekend, some shop kids are in for a rough surprise.
Tuesday morning is really gonna suck. It's really gonna suck.
I'm obsessed with the show.
Can we talk
I like
about
it so much.
the painting at the very end though?
Oh, the
Cupid and Psyche. Oh my, okay.
Cheryl as the goddess Diaphina.
You do realize that we can never allow Will to buy a van because that painting is going on the side of that fucking van.
Honestly, I would encourage him. I would be like, okay, here's what we're going to do. That painting on this side. Archie's on the back. And then we'll just like find out if she made a painting of Kevin and Moose and Fangs and put that on the driver's side.
Well, we have to put Betty's on the back because if you do that, then no one's going to tailgate you.
No one's going to tailgate you. Okay, fine. So then make a painting where they're all dressed up like firemen. All the boys are dressed up like firemen.
Yes.
And put that on the side.
You can do that on like the bumper or something.
Yeah, cool.
If you guys want to see that happen, go to the Patreon or give us a tip in the Cash App and the Venmo.
Rachel's so good.
Well, I mean, it's the easiest segue.
It is.
Get us a van.
Yeah. We want a van. We will get it custom painted with these Riverdale paintings. I'll do it. I'll definitely do it. So that was this episode. Super crazy, real weird. Honestly, like the best kind of Riverdale, if we're being honest. But I do wish that the first and the Archie and the Jughead stories had something.
Yes, had come to some sort of feasible conclusion.
Because that's the thing is like at least that trucker died.
Yes.
You know, it's like something happened. The trucker died. We took a step. It didn't really help us, but we took a step. But it's like we're still really just like deep in the shit with Archie and Jughead.
Yeah, just straight up jazz hands. Crazy jazz hands.
Yeah. It's a little box step.
Yeah.
But yeah, next week. Oh, Josie and the Pussycats are back next week.
Yes.
Yeah. But they can save Riverdale. Haven't stepped foot in the town in over 10 years, but they'll save it.
Hey, we know we did all three of you real dirty. But you're the ones that are going to fix it. Yikes.
There's some
yikes
commentary.
Yeah.
That we'll probably make next week. So, but yeah. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back next week. Bye.